Welcome to my channel. This is Divested Diamonds. You have arrived. Hello, ladies. Please do me a favor and click the like button as you watch this video. Thank you. Thank you kindly. So, this conversation is going to be triggering for some. If you are opposed to strong views on womanhood, I suggest exiting this video right now. Otherwise, stay at your own peril. Now, let's talk about Fox Soul and whatever agenda they're trying to push. So, I'm not interested in Fox Soul, nor am I subscribed to their channel. But every now and then, something will come through the feed, and depending on the subject matter, I may or may not click on it. In my observation, this channel has a tendency to have disingenuous conversations about Black issues or issues concerning Black women. While I don't really care whether the so-called Black community exists or not, I do care about the truth. I do care about facts. On September 8th, they posted a video entitled, "Is There a War Against Black Men?" with host Tammy Mack. It wasn't really the title I was interested in. It was the participants on the show, and one in particular, Hope Giselle. Now, the panelists were Cynthia G, Umar Johnson, some guy named Dwan Brown, Hope Giselle, and then the host, Tammy Mack. Now, her show basically talks about the business of being Black, tackling issues in the so-called Black community. Let's take a look at this picture right here. One of these is not like the others. Hope Giselle is not a biological woman. This right here is a trans woman. When you look at this panel, they are seemingly separated by sex, except Hope should not be up there with Tammy and Cynthia. Let me tell you why this matters. As a woman, and we all know what a woman is, right? An adult human female. I'm offended that Fox Soul deemed it appropriate to include a trans woman on the side of biological females and pretended as though there was nothing wrong with it. Sure, upon further investigation, Hope is openly trans, but Hope is not a household name. Therefore, those who aren't able to clock a trans woman wouldn't find anything wrong with this. The reason this is concerning is that we should not be advocating for this to be the norm. And what I mean by that is we shouldn't be comfortable allowing trans women to speak on behalf of women on anything that concerns us. They are not qualified to speak on our behalf because not only are we biologically different, we don't share the same life experiences as far as womanhood is concerned. Now, you can assume the identity of a woman. Unfortunately, it doesn't automatically make you one. If you ask me the question, did Hope have the right to be there? My answer would be yes, absolutely. Regardless of how Hope chooses to show up, Hope is still a Black male of the trans woman experience. That's not an issue, and that's not the purpose of this conversation. The point here is for Black women, whether divested or not, to get into the habit of speaking up and creating boundaries against outside forces whose agenda stands to impede upon the rights of women. I personally wouldn't have had an issue with Hope being on the show and speaking on issues from the perspective of a quote-unquote trans woman. What Fox Soul did was misleading and disingenuous by presenting an individual who is quite clearly not a natural-born female and allowing that person to speak on behalf of Black women. They knew what hope was when they reached out to him. So there is no excuse for having allowed him to speak as a woman as opposed to a trans woman. He had no right to do that. What I have observed in such situations are actual women defending this kind of behavior, all in the name of inclusion. Acceptance and inclusion should not be forced upon anyone because it's a perfect setting for breeding resentment. People must be allowed to react accordingly as long as no one is being hurt. Black women are already at the bottom of the societal power structure, and I would hate for us to keep being a place of refuge for female-presenting males who feel a lack of acceptance in places they wish to belong. It's not our problem, nor is it a responsibility of ours to keep coddling and protecting those who aspire to be who we are. If you, as a Black woman, think that this does not have the potential to be more problematic in the future, you clearly haven't been paying much attention to what's really going on. There has been this attempt to try and incorporate trans women into Black women's spaces, hoping that Black women would notice. But there are those of us who see what's going on. Black male worshiping culture is in full force and promoted within the so-called community. Black women are socialized to identify with and show empathy to Black males regardless of what capacity they come in. In recent years, here on YouTube especially, there has been an increasing number of Black gay men and so-called trans women frequenting Black women's channels, participating in live stream panels, talking about Black women's issues when they know absolutely well that they can't relate to the struggles and experiences of being born female. But because a lot of these people consume everything feminine, aspire to be female, and dream of being accepted by Black women, while wishing to be considered part of, quote unquote, the girls, a lot of them have become so comfortable talking down to women, using harmful, misogynistic terms such as bitch and hoe towards women as terms of endearment. Black male worship does not begin in your childhood and end with your heterosexual relationships. It extends itself all the way to some of the relationships that Black women have with gay men and the trans community, more specifically, male to women trans people. The reason Hope sat on that panel and didn't bother to present himself as trans was because he wanted to deceive. He chose to deceive. He kept saying things like, we, as in women, and y'all, in reference to Black men, to align himself with Black women by separating himself from Black men. It's problematic. I went to Hope's Instagram page and found two very interesting videos. One was in reference to the Candace Owens and Mark Lamont Hill interview, in which Hill says to Owens that men can get pregnant. Let's take a look.
Words have real meanings. We cannot suddenly get into society where there are no truths.
So to acknowledge a social construct does not mean that we ignore biology, and it doesn't mean that we don't have.
Can men get pregnant?
Depends. I know.
What does it depend on?
I know trans men that can get pregnant.
That means it's a woman.
I'm gonna say this one time for the allies who mean well in the back. Y'all do not have the lived experience enough to be able to go toe-to-toe with people like Candace Owens. And a lot of the time, the reason that y'all get packed up so quickly is because y'all are doing the job of the people that are in your circle specifically to help you do these things correctly. And when you can't do these things correctly, that's when you call in the big guns. A lot of y'all want to be able to say that y'all did a thing and get the moment and make the clip and have everybody say, yay, you did the thing. But it's more important to make sure that trans people become visible in these conversations, because the more that y'all have these conversations with one another and continue to look a little silly because you don't have all of the facts, you don't have the lived experience, you don't have the emotion behind it that it takes to actually convey a message, y'all are actually doing us a disservice. And while I respect it and while I love the idea of a black man going to defense of trans people, if you don't know what you're talking about, or if you can't come from the gut or the gusto, phone a friend, please.
So, by that same logic, shouldn't a biological male who happens to be a trans woman stay away from conversations that discuss women and their lived experience? Because again, Hope kept referring to himself in a manner that seemed to suggest that Hope was a woman with XX chromosomes and not someone with XY during the Fox Soul interview. I would have been more inclined to take Hope seriously if Hope had showed up on the panel as a member of the alphabet community, speaking from the point of view of a biological male of the trans experience, but rather he inserted himself in a woman's position and used a language that would confuse those who were not able to tell he was trans. Look, if Hope wants to be an ally to black women, that's fine. However, the same advice he gave in the video you just saw should apply to his own life, especially where conversations on women are concerned. You can't speak on behalf of women on experiences you've never had. No XX chromosome carrying, heterosexual or gay female knows or understands the trans experience because we've carried on with life as our original selves. Likewise, we don't know what being trans is all about. I think that unaltered, adult human females should be having conversations that concern them by not including biological males who don't belong. It's offensive. So, while this whole debacle was going on, I cruised through these YouTube streets and came across another video by Philip Scott. That's Phil from The Advice Show, who posed the question, are trans women the new representation for the sisterhood? That question did not sit well with me for obvious reasons. Like I've just mentioned, my experiences as a woman are going to be different compared to someone who's born male but lives their life as a quote-unquote trans woman. Now, Philip is not someone that I watch at all, right? He's a swirling pro-black content creator who's not on my radar, but his video did come through my feed and the title compelled me to click on it. What we're not going to do is have loudmouth, biological males having conversations in our absence without any female input. You can't speak on matters of women with no women in sight. It makes no sense. But let's take a look.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, everyone is talking about this recent episode of Business of Being Black with Tammy Mack on Fox Soul. And the conversation has been centered around Dr. Umar Johnson and Cynthia G. As you see the title, no one is having this conversation. So Hope Giselle is a trans woman that was on the show. And Hope Giselle was speaking on behalf of the sisterhood. Now, I want to just kind of play, just play some things and listen to how Hope Giselle is speaking. I don't know Hope Giselle at all. I have nothing against Hope Giselle, But I just have some questions about a few things, from the sisters. I'm just asking as a brother. I just want to get some clarity in the comments section. That's all. So let's just go ahead and play, some of this, and let's just kind of review this.
Hope, why should Black people care?
We should care simply because when Black men are not happy, Black women can't thrive, and then the Black household and Black families don't flourish. I think that as long as Black men feel attacked, they're always going to turn that back where they feel like they have the most power and honestly say so, which is the Black family. Oftentimes that energy that we pour into who is doing what to other people is then neglected within our own Black men, and then they cannot thrive as fathers, as nurturers, as caretakers, as heads of the household. But they can only do that if we acknowledge that there's a problem outside of us. Currently, Black men are not being held at the fire and said that if you don't provide this, or if you don't show up in this way, we're going to do X, Y, and Z to your family. Y'all just are not showing up. And then when you're asked to be held accountable to these things, you say things like, well, back in this time, and when we tried to do this back in a couple of years ago, half of y'all weren't even around when those things were, put into action. And then when you found out about them, instead of bringing them back to the forefront to see if they would work for you in this day and age, you just talk about what didn't work on the back end of things. I think that a lot of the times you all find it a lot easier to gaslight us into believing that we're the problem so that you can have more time to figure out what the solution is, but that's not the solution anymore. We figured out that doesn't work, and you trying to buy time in the system is not going to help anybody, and especially not the Black communities that you say that you love.
Now, Hope is using the term y'all, as in, I'm not a part of y'all. I'm a trans woman. I'm part of the sisterhood. Okay? That's what Hope kept saying. Gaslighting us. So I'm playing these clips so you can hear that Hope puts, herself, right, as one of the spokespersons of the sisterhood. Now, it wasn't too long ago, Saucy Santana, and I talked about this on my entertainment channel, has said that Black women need to listen to trans women because they know better on a lot of things. And we have been seeing that the agenda has to be trans women taking over, bio woman spaces. Now, one thing I can say about the studs isn't trying to take over Black men's spaces. The studs say, look, we like what we like. We studs, but we still, if we need to, we still can say, hey, hold on, I'm a woman. Even though I'm wearing the same cologne as you, I'm a woman, so don't get that twisted. I'm in my own category as a stud. Y'all are the men, y'all do y'all. It's all good. But with this trans woman thing, bio women, what's your position on this? I have my own thoughts if I was a bio woman, but let's continue.
Yes, because I feel like when you can name all of these things so eloquently and so beautifully, and yet y'all still fail at being able to do these things after years and years and years and years and years of trying.
And Hope Giselle is gender warring. Oh my God. Yeah, the new representative has now started the gender war. But that's call it what it is. Your new representative was one of us. And they transitioned into a woman. Okay.
Go ahead, Hope.
I was going to say, but it's at the expense of the Black families that y'all claim to care so much about.
He keeps hearing the word y'all. So clearly Hope is the representative. And once again, you have not heard Cynthia G interrupt one time because, okay, if I was Cynthia G, this would be my lane to go slam dunk on, because if she talk about the failure of Black men, I'm gonna sound like Cynthia G. If she talks about the failure of Black men are conquered, Black men are feminine, Black men, why didn't Cynthia G go say something about that? That's her talking point right there talking, and she shouldn't have interrupted like she interrupted Umar several times and say, hey, wait a minute, Hope. I respect you a trans woman and all that, but you really don't speak on my behalf because we got two different things going on. Cynthia didn't do that, not one time. But she was just so attacked on Umar, though, when really the person she should have been speaking up on is being her representative, and she's staying freaking quiet. Her and Tammy staying quiet. And Tammy knew that, who Hope was. Now, Umar didn't know. So Umar put out a statement saying, hey, wait a minute. I wouldn't even responded the way I responded to Hope if I would have known Hope was a trans woman. He said, I feel deceived in that, which, you know, Umar has a right to say that because people need to know who they are, how you respond to them. It's not to say that Umar didn't say he hated nobody or nothing like that. He's just saying, hey, it's a different dynamic. I need to respond on this, you know, and I agree with Umar on that. But let's continue.
I think that what we fail to realize is that when the Black men who do have that platform that are not doing those things get on, the last thing that they're thinking about is the Black adjacency to their family. They want to assimilate to whatever whiteness, whatever white male privilege they get. And that's a large part of the problem. We see this happen when we look at social media, where we're seeing Black men publicly proclaim the idea of loving on everything but a Black woman, wanting to have children because their eyes and their hair are going to be looser and more exotic looking. You do not see that as much in the influx of Black women as you do in Black men. So when
Oh my God. Oh my God. Listen, I have to go there. Hope. That is maybe a legitimate conversation with bio women. But Hope, you cannot, you know, even get down in that conversation. But yet you have centered yourself in this conversation as a representation of the sisterhood. And once again, Tammy Mack and Cynthia are quiet. That's the conversation that I say that needs to be had. And we're having it here first, folks. We're having it here first. So, you know, everybody else pick it up. That's fine. But yeah.
Actually, Phil was not the first person to point this out. Karah did, okay? Madam Karah talked about this before Philip did. She did a great breakdown on this topic, and I'll leave the link to her video in the description bar below so you ladies can go and watch it in your own time. But anyway, the trans community does not represent and is not a representative of women. We are the original. We are the blueprint. But again, if we keep allowing biological males to speak on our behalf, women are going to lose their voices. If you think that this is impossible, if you think that this will never happen, look around you. It was only a few years ago when the conversation of biological males in women's sports was just a conversation, right? Fast forward to 2022. What have we experienced so far? How many opportunities have been taken away from biological women, all in the name of inclusion? I mean, granted, there's been a little pushback, but the woke mob is still pushing for those unfair practices to keep happening. Everything starts off as a test, and before you know it, it's the norm. If women don't point these issues out and give these communities the pushback they deserve, women will be pushed aside. And we will be watching biological males thriving in spaces that used to be ours. I don't think that any of us are looking for that. And as far as allyship is concerned, allyship is something that should be done voluntarily and not forced. And if these people are looking for allies, women aren't going to give them that based on the current state of affairs. Because honestly, it would be foolish of us to support something that leads to our own demise. And I understand that not all women feel the way that I do. But these are also the types who will realize the serious consequences of allowing males in female spaces once it's too late. Women are different from men. And women are different from trans women because both men and trans women are biological males. That's not quote unquote transphobic. That's a fact. What happened on Fox Soul is a slippery slope. And if we stay quiet and not address this issue, we are going to have males representing Black women. We already know that the world thinks of black women as masculine anyway. So what difference is that going to make as far as they're concerned? I know it's a harsh statement to make, but it's also the reality of things. Not only do we need to think about this, we need to act on it and make sure that it doesn't end up that way. We need to be careful who we're allowing to speak on our behalf. If these networks are pushing an agenda, we need to push right back. What's really funny about the TRAs is that it's okay for them to bluntly tell us how we can't speak for them because we haven't had their lived experience. But what gives them the right to speak on women's behalf when they haven't had our lived experience? Like I said, it's a slippery slope in which women will lose. Hope also admitted to going on the show with minimal makeup to basically trick people like Umar Johnson because he didn't want people to say they, trans women that is, can only fool others when they have all of that going on, meaning wearing lots of makeup. Let's take a look.
But what really burdens your grits and what really makes you upset, Dr. Umar, is that you sat there on that motherfucking live, that panel for an hour and a half with commercial breaks and all of that shit. And your little dick was jumping. And every time I opened my intelligent mouth, bitch, your little dick got a little harder. And you were just so motherfucking enthralled with this black queen that was spitting this motherfucking knowledge. And even if you didn't agree with everything that I was saying, bitch, you was down for it. Because when it comes down to the women that you claim that you like, bitch, on that panel, I was her. It's giving skin. It was giving fresh face. It was giving no cleavage. It was giving, I'm not giving it to everybody. It was giving African kente cloth. It was giving all of the things. And bitch, I set it up that way for a reason. I didn't go in and put on lashes or overdo my makeup. I barely brushed my motherfucking hair because I didn't want people to turn around and say, you can only fool us if you have all of that going on. You can only trick us if you have all of that going on. You can only be a woman if you have all of that going on. And it wasn't giving any of that. And you still sat there on the other end of that motherfucking screen, enthralled with my black, beautiful queen ass. And you did so on a public platform in front of everybody, and it's going to live forever, and you can never take it back because a whole bunch of motherfucking people have seen you call my trans ass a beautiful black queen on several occasions. And that's what you're really upset about. You could give less than a fuck about the fact that you were on a panel that you didn't know or that you didn't know. The only thing that you're pressed about is the fact that you couldn't censor yourself not to say how you truly felt about what you were sitting in front of. And that's why you're bothered. You're not bothered because of the fact that you only bothered because now all them hoteps that follow you, when they want to get under your skin, now they gonna go back to that clip and be like, remember when you said this? Because the same man that has spent years of his platform talking about how you could clock one from a mile away and these men and these da-da-da-da-da, and if you don't understand the real essence of a woman and da-da-da-da-da, and I know, as a man, I know when I'm in the presence of a black queen, all of you men out there that's allowing yourself to be tricked is because you like that da-da-da-da-da, y'all are beta males. But you sat right in front of me. You sat right in front of me. And Umar did not clock Hope after the fact. People who wanted to know how I was getting him together and wanted to know who the fuck I was did their research and told Umar. I wasn't clocked. Let's be very clear about this. Not that it even matters. Let me take that off the table. Not that it even fucking matters. Not that it even fucking matters. But in this instance, what I'm saying is that it's a problem because the same men that sit back and say shit like, oh, if you can't tell, if you da-da-da-da-da-da, I know a black woman when I see a black woman, none of these niggas could ever Trick me, I would never be gotten because these men, da 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 da, and I bet without that wig and that makeup and da 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 da, all of this other stuff, all of the things that you could say, you can't say. You can't say. I'm not wearing wigs. I don't have on a face full of makeup. I'm not distracting you with my titties. I'm not distracting you with my cleavage. All that was on that screen was my big ass shoulders, my big ass head, and my big ass face. That was all that was on the screen. And you still missed it. And you had conversation and you engaged. And I don't change my voice. The voice is the voice. And so you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out, how did this person deceive me? I didn't deceive you. I came and showed up as myself and you received it. I came and I showed up as myself and you received it as it was. A beautiful black woman sitting before you, because that's what it was.
Okay, so this is exactly what I'm talking about. We need to be careful who it is that we allow to speak on our behalf. And people like the ones on Fox Soul do not care about the bigger picture when it comes to black women and their representation. You heard what he said. This guy did not go on the show to speak seriously about the topic at hand because, to his own admission, he had something to prove as a trans person. He came on the show to play games. And with that mindset, do you think that it benefits black women at all, allowing the likes of him to talk about such issues when all he did was trivialize everything? He sat there as a quote-unquote woman telling black men what they have or haven't done while secretly wanting to prove that these same men have the ability to be attracted to him as long as he remained unclocked. This brings it back to what divestors are always saying about black women who pedestalize black men. Do you think that trans women are exempt from that? Hope's agenda was to show up looking like a woman to basically deceive people like Umar Johnson because he feels quote-unquote unclockable. This was a game to him. And this is exactly the reason why conversations regarding black women must be addressed by black women, females with XX chromosomes, and not an alternative woman with XY. And while this is not the divestors community, this misrepresentation affects all black women in the US. The only way that trans women and women will ever get along is by having separate spaces while refraining from talking about each other's plight as if we understand when we really don't. Because until we fully understand each other and accept that there are boundaries, this relationship will always be tumultuous. It's clear to see, in this case especially, that there are certain biological traits or behaviors that never change, regardless of what one does to their exterior. Fox Soul is trying to make money off of the emotional support of black people who are still desperate to try and maintain the so-called community. People have to understand that this is a business, and these organizations do not care about black women or our image. If this becomes the norm, where trans women don't have to disclose that they are trans before speaking on matters of biological women, how long do you think it'll be before the world starts questioning real women about their authenticity? It's a slippery slope. If we want to be on the outside looking in, silence is definitely the answer. We need to start protecting what's ours, and that includes language and image. We need to maintain boundaries to avoid the invasion of our spaces and conversations. Biological males aren't going to do it for us. They have their own agenda. We have to do it for ourselves. My overall opinion on this topic is that it's irrelevant. I don't see the point of working on a community that's incapable of thriving. It's been a matriarchy for the longest time, and all Black women seem to do is breed into dysfunctional situations where the men don't give a damn. Black men have never thought on a larger scale in terms of bettering the so-called community, because unless someone else is doing for them what they're supposed to have been doing all along, they are not interested. Black women and children have been abused and neglected at their hands and on their watch. Pretending to fix something that never existed in the first place is complete foolishness and a waste of time. There is no incentive to do better because those who do anything at all are tired, used, and abused, if not deleted, by the very people who claim that they wish to have a community. What's the point of having these discussions when they yield very little to no results? The very people being talked about are the ones responsible for destroying their supposed community. What is the point? But anyway, focusing on the topic at hand, Cynthia did very well holding these males accountable. She gave Umar that work, and deservedly so. Now, although I didn't agree with Hope showing up and speaking on behalf of Black women, he raised some great points as well. So, is there a war against Black men? My answer is no. They have been coddled and worshipped by the so-called community for so long that they have successfully crippled themselves into doing nothing for themselves. They live in a perpetual cloud of victimhood, so until they realize that they can't continue being spoon-fed everything, they are always going to see themselves as victims. There is no war against Black men. Life is increasingly hard for them because people are less willing to put up with their BS. And finally, Cynthia G is not the face of divestment. She never has been. This is why Fox Soul reached out to her and asked her to participate in this conversation. That conversation has everything to do with the Black community. That is why she was a part of it. She is a part of the Black community. True divestors are not. The reason I'm mentioning this is because Hope Giselle mentioned how Cynthia G is always telling Black women to divest from Black men, divestment from the Black male system. Sure, she uses divestment talking points, but she isn't a divested woman. Cynthia was a part of the conversation because she still prefers to have intimate relationships with Black men. Her words, not mine. Divestors, on the other hand, don't. Talking divestment while sleeping Black does not make one a divestor. When Cynthia G started creating content here on YouTube, she would sit in her car on her lunch break talking about white supremacy and calling white people cave beasts and albinoids. She clearly had no love for white people. Her numbers remained stagnant for a while because, well, the algorithm, I guess. She has since made a transition, and so her work is a lot different from how it used to be. She then started doing that series, right? Who They Really Choose, or something to that effect. She concentrated more on the type of white women Black men choose. When divestment took off, she borrowed a lot of our talking points and used them in her videos while framing it as a way to help Black women. Cynthia is a smart woman, and I'm sure that she figured out that the best way to make it in Black YouTube is to cater to the heartstrings of Black women by talking about Black men. She understands that Black women tend to click on videos where Black men are being held to task because deep down, most of them want to be with Black men anyway. When you throw in hints of divestment, you have yourself a winner. So yeah, I'm not hating on Cynthia. I think what she did was very clever, considering the fact that she admitted in one of her previous videos that she has never claimed to be a divester. She is not divested, and she will never let go of the BBC. But Black women only see what they want to see. And if there's any confusion, it's because most Black women refuse to see what's really in front of them. That's all. You need to listen to the underlying message when people are talking to you. A lot of these people who use divestment talking points are either not divested or claim to be divested solely on the internet, but not in real life. For most people, it seems cool to be a part of something online. Once they click off, their online presence and their real life look completely different from each other. I'm just saying, and I just want you to know. On that note, what are your thoughts on what's been discussed here today? Please leave your thoughts and comments down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And remember, ladies, divest, divest, divest. Thank you so much for watching. This is Divested Diamonds, and I'll see you next time. Bye, diamonds.